Stay with me for a moment, because I want you to think like a detective for the next 18 minutes, not a viewer, a detective. And I want you to watch this case the same way Detective Dan Jackson did, knowing that somewhere inside it there is one detail that makes everything else fall into place. Your job and his is to find it out. December 6, 1991, just before midnight, North Austin, Texas. A patrol officer notices smoke rising from a strip mall on West Anderson Lane. He calls it in as a structure fire. When firefighters push through the door of the yogurt shop, they stop. 4 teenage girls, bound with their own clothing, gagged, shot in the head, and the building was burning around them. Amy Ayers was 13 years old. She was there to catch a ride home with her friends. Sarah Harbison was 15. Her older sister Jennifer, 17, worked at the closing shift. They'd come in together that evening just to keep Jennifer company. Eliza Thomas was also 17. She and Jennifer were best friends. They worked every closing shift together. None of them went home that night. Austin, Texas called it the night the city lost its innocence. And they were right. But the reason this case will haunt you isn't the crime. It's what the investigation did next. When investigators processed the scene, they had almost nothing. The fire had done its job, physical evidence destroyed or contaminated by water from the hoses, no security cameras in the shop, no witnesses who saw anyone leave. What they did recover: DNA swabs taken from the victims and 2 shell casings, one from a .22 caliber revolver, one from a .380 pistol. They had the weapon's fingerprints, they just didn't have the hands that held them. Now I want you to pay attention to something. Less than 24 hours after these murders, a man driving a stolen car from Georgia was stopped by Border Patrol agents at a checkpoint west of El Paso. Agents ran his plates, found the car was stolen, found a .380 pistol on the seat beside him. They wrote it down, filed a report, and let him go. His name was Robert Eugene Brashers. Hold that name, because no one, not one detective, not one database, would connect that border stop to these 4 girls for 34 years. In the days following the murders, the investigation moved the way desperate investigations do, fast and in the wrong direction. A few days after the crime, a 16-year-old named Maurice Pierce was picked up at a nearby mall carrying a gun. Under questioning, he named 3 friends: Forrest Wilborn, Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, all of them teenagers. Police circled them, watched them, waited for years. Then in 1999, 8 years after the murders, detectives brought the men back in for questioning. They were adults now, and what happened inside those interrogation rooms became the second tragedy of this case. Michael Scott talked to the police for hours, multi-day sessions, no lawyer, high pressure. He eventually confessed and named 3 others. Robert Springsteen confessed too. Both men later recanted. Both said their confessions were made under duress. One detective, it emerged, had been caught on a security footage holding a gun to Scott's head during questioning. It didn't matter. Springsteen and Scott were convicted. Scott was sent to death row. Springsteen received a life sentence. 2 men, teenagers at the moment of the crime, were now in prison for murders they did not commit. The charges against Pierce were dropped in 2003. Wilborn was never indicted, but Springsteen and Scott sat in cells for 10 years. This is the part of the case that armchair detectives always come back to, because it wasn't just a wrongful conviction. It was a system that decided it had the answer and stopped looking for the real one. DNA technology was not waiting. While Springsteen and Scott sat in the prison, the science used to put them there was already being replaced by something even more powerful. In 2009, advanced DNA testing on evidence collected in 1991 pointed to a completely different suspect, someone who is not Springsteen, not Scott, not Pierce, not Wilborn. A judge ordered both men freed. District Attorney Jose Garcia would later stand in a podium and say, "The overwhelming weight of the evidence points the guilt for one man and the innocence for four." But they still didn't know who that one man was. The case went cold again and stayed cold for another 13 years. 13 more years of Amy Ayers' father waking up without an answer. 13 more years of Elisa Thomas's sister carrying a grief with no resolution. 13 more years of four girls waiting for someone to ask the right question. In 2022, the Austin Police Department assigned the case to a cold case detective named Danielle Jackson. He knew what he was walking into, a case file that had already sent 2 innocent men to prison, a city that had been asking the same question for 31 years, and a victim's family, specifically Amy Ayers' sister-in-law Angie, who had been fighting since before she even knew the family. Jackson had been warned about Angie. She won't give up, they told him. Good, he thought. Neither would he. He started from zero, not from where the last detective left off, not from the confessions, not from the foreman, from the physical evidence collected on December 6, 1991. And this is where the detective's work became the story. June 2025, Jackson resubmitted the ballistic data on the .380 shell casing, the one recovered from the floor drain of the yogurt shop, to the National Interrogated Ballistic Information Network. The NIBIN database links firearms to crime across all 50 states. It came back with a match: not Austin, an unsolved murder in Kentucky, 1998. Same gun, different state, different victim, different year. Jackson noted it and kept going. He submitted the DNA profile from the Austin evidence into a South Carolina state database. That database was tied to a 1990 case, a 28-year-old woman named Genevieve Zatricki found strangled in her bathtub at Greenville after being attacked while she slept. The case had sat unsolved for 35 years. August 22, 2025, the South Carolina State Lab contacted Jackson. The YSTR DNA profile from Austin from evidence collected in 1991 matched the profile in their database, a 2.5 million to 1 likelihood. The name in the database: Robert Eugene Brashers. Jackson pulled the file, born Newport News, Virginia, 1958. Lengthy criminal history: attempted murder, burglary, impersonating police officers, convicted, served time, released on good behavior in 1989. Less than a year after release, he murdered Genevieve Zatricki in South Carolina. 1997, Memphis, Tennessee, he bound 4 people inside a home, sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. 1998, Partridgeville, Missouri, he murdered Sherry Sherrier and her 12-year-old daughter Megan. Sexual assault, shooting, fire. Jackson recognized the pattern: break-ins, binding victims with their own clothing, sexual assault, shooting, then fire. It was the same pattern every time. He kept reading and then he found it. December 8, 1991, 2 days after the yogurt shop murders, a man in a stolen car from Georgia stopped at a border checkpoint near El Paso, found with a .380 pistol. The same .380 pistol had the casing in the floor drain. The name on the checkpoint report: Robert Eugene Brashers. Now, remember the detail I asked you to hold at the start of this video? The border stop, the .380 pistol, the stolen car heading west, the name they wrote down and filed away. That was him. 48 hours after 4 girls were murdered in Austin, the killer was stopped at a checkpoint with the weapon. He was right there. They let him go, and the case would not be solved for another 34 years. September 29, 2025, Detective Daniel Jackson stood at a podium in Austin City Hall. Behind him, photographs of 4 girls: Amy, Jennifer, Sarah, Elisa. In the audience, their families. Bob Ayers, Amy's father, walked into the front of the room. He reached up and pinned a small badge to Jackson's chest. It read, "We will not forget." Jackson told the families, "This is something that would not have happened until 2025, and I am sorry that it took 34 years for us to get here, but we're here now." Brashers could not be prosecuted. He had shot himself in January 1999 during a police standoff at a motel in Kennett, Missouri, long before anyone suspected him of anything in Austin. He had been dead for 26 years before Daniel Jackson said his name. In February 2026, a judge formally declared innocent the 4 men who had spent years under suspicion, 2 of them wrongfully convicted, 1 sent to death row. 34 years, 2 wrongful convictions, 1 serial killer, tied to at least 8 murders across 5 states, and 1 detective who inherited a poisoned case in 2022 went back to a shell casing no one had resubmitted in years and refused to leave it the way he found it. He didn't crack this case with a confession. He didn't catch a break. He asks a question that no one had thought to ask. Does this casing match anything anywhere else? And the answer had been waiting for him. The motive will never be known. We know what Brashers did. We know how Jackson found him. We will probably never know why he was in Austin that night, or why he chose that shop, or what he was thinking as he drove west towards the border, with a gun on the seat beside him, and 4 girls left behind in the fire. Some questions survive the answer, but 4 girls have their names back. And that detective, the one who cleaned up everyone else's mess, got to stand in a room and look Amy Ayers' father in the eye. That's what this work actually looks like. The next case is about a detective who was formally pulled off an investigation before he could finish it. He spent the next 25 years finishing it anyway. If you want to think like a detective, that one is already waiting for you.